All right, so I'm just going to give a little overview of the project, go into a little more detail, not too much. Just to recognize the few other folks who are on this project who are not here: Jarlath, O'Neill Dunn, and Ernie Buford from the Spatial Analysis Lab, and as well as our full steering committee, who are, again, thank them for giving their time and expertise to help sort of guide this project along. So project goals overall, the first goal is sort of the overarching idea is to compile this database of vernal pool locations from the region, including both potential pools that have been remotely sensed as well as those that have been verified on the ground. And if you're not familiar with what the North Atlantic region is, it's a fairly extensive region, including parts of Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and New England, as well as the eastern portions of Canada. And in those states where only portions of the states are included, we're not trying to just find vernal pools or find data on vernal pools in those regions that are included in the North Atlantic regions. If there's a statewide database for vernal pools in Pennsylvania, we would be very interested in incorporating all of them into this project and not limiting it to just the eastern parts of Pennsylvania or southeastern. So that's the North Atlantic region. Second goal is to produce this sort of a technical review document that looks at all the mapping efforts that have been compiled in the region or are currently underway in the North Atlantic region, and sort of describe the various methodologies of those projects and what's been successful and what hasn't. And three, develop a method for identifying vernal pools remotely using LiDAR and object-based image analysis, and Sean will talk in more depth about that when I'm done. So I'm going to focus just on number one here, the compilation of the regional data set. And when I describe this to people, I often get this look, why? If the data already exists, why do we need to pull it all together? Why don't we just leave it where it is? And in one word, the answer is really just for conservation. It's going to allow us to do more region-wide conservation. And that's pretty broad and amorphous, but that's really the primary focus, primary outcome. And when I was doing vernal pool mapping in Vermont, using aerial photographs to map vernal pools, time and time again, I was surprised at how often this happened. I was using color infrared imagery from the early 90s to locate vernal pools, and then I had to transfer that information onto a GIS, so it would be geo-rectified, because I was using transparencies to locate the pools. And the color or the black and white orthophotos I was using on my laptop to geo-rectify the pools were from the 2000s, 2006 or something. And time again, I'd find a nice looking vernal pool like this one in the middle of the photograph, and then when I would look at the more recent photograph on my laptop, I would find it was gone. There was a barn built on top of it, or a house, or it had been enlarged into a pond with a beach and probably stocked trout. So that really drove home the point. We know we're losing these wetlands. We know we need to do a better job of mapping where they are so that we can take steps, take actions to prevent their loss going forward. So one of the things it's going to allow us to do is to do some more broad landscape level conservation planning. We have a region-wide database. We can do that sort of broad scale conservation planning. Some other applications might be for modeling, to assess the population viability of species under various stressors, such as population growth or urban growth or climate change, which is something that the Designing Sustainable Landscapes projects at UMass, which is another NALCC-funded project, has been doing with birds and some reptiles and really exciting, some really exciting stuff. And I remember seeing Bill DeLuca give a talk a few years ago at a bird conference in Plymouth, Massachusetts, where he looked at, where he had some of these models developed for bird species, looking at under various stressors. And it was really, after the talk, I went up and said, do you have any of this, or are you planning to do any of this for pool breeding amphibians? And he said, we'd love to, but we don't know where they are. We don't know, we don't have enough information on a region-wide landscape to do this. We could do it for Massachusetts, or we could do it for New Jersey, but we can't do it for the whole region. And Scott's going to be talking about this Designing Sustainable Landscapes projects a little bit later. It also will provide a sort of a pool of data for researchers or those developing monitoring projects on a regional scale to be able to select study sites, as well as identify data gaps if there are future mapping efforts that are going to occur, or even just regions that we want to focus efforts on, either for mapping or for field verification. And you know, I think we have 3 really pretty solid data sets, statewide data sets, that will be incorporated, I think, into this project. And it all started with Matt's work back around 2000 when he mapped potential vernal pools for Massachusetts. And Matt, God bless you, 29,000 something vernal pools, potential vernal pools in Massachusetts. Looks like parts of Massachusetts are just one big And currently, I think this is fairly current, I went out to the MassGIS website to download this. They've got almost 7,000 certified in Massachusetts. So pretty impressive. And that was followed up pretty quickly by the work done in New Jersey, using basically the same methodologies, using color infrared aerial photos to pick out potential vernal pools. And another pretty impressive effort, 13,000 plus potential vernal pools in New Jersey. And currently about 1,300, a little over 1,300 certified in New Jersey. And then the stragglers in the group are Vermont, where we just finished our mapping project over the last 4 or 5 years, using, again, the same methods, using color infrared aerial photography. And we mapped just a paltry 4,800 some vernal pools, potential vernal pools, and have field verified about 650 to date, although that work is still ongoing. We're still field verifying pools. So we have at least 3 statewide data sets that I assume will be incorporated into this project. And there are a lot of smaller efforts out there as well. Dawn Morgan is here from Maine, who has been one of the leaders of this project in Maine that's taking a slightly different approach. Rather than trying to tackle the whole state, they're doing it on a town-wide basis. So they're getting towns who are interested in participating and cooperating, and they're doing training workshops and getting people in the communities really involved, which is a great way to do it, because you've already got sort of a built-in group of citizens who are behind the project and in support of it, and out there on the ground promoting vernal pool conservation in their community. So, Dawn, you have about 10 towns? Where's Dawn? There she is.
Yeah, I think more than that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's great. New Hampshire's got kind of another effort going on. They have this document about identification and documenting vernal pools, and there was and Mike tells me that this is going through another iteration of editing, or revised. Yeah, it's going to be revised. And there was a press release that I ran across not too long ago, where they're really trying to get the word out to help Fish and Game map vernal pools in New Hampshire as well. So there's some smaller efforts, maybe not as coordinated as some of the others that have taken place in the past, but these are really great to get things going. And then there's some regional efforts. The Upper Susquehanna Coalition in northern Pennsylvania and southern New York. They have a mapping project going on. The work from the Harris Center, and Brett's here somewhere, there she is, who's heading up that project in southwestern New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire. Pennsylvania has a statewide mapping project. I'm not too familiar with it. I don't know how many pools they've mapped, or if it's just on the ground, or if they're doing potential work, potential mapping remotely. But we'll try to find out more about that. Virginia has some work going on, as does Nova Scotia. And we haven't ignored our friends to the north. There are a bunch of people who contacted me a few weeks ago who were interested in this but couldn't attend. And so we're filming presentations. We're going to put them on YouTube, and they're going to watch them. And then we're going to have a conference call with folks from Quebec and Nova Scotia, and there may be a person or two from New Brunswick as well who are interested. They're very interested in advancing vernal pool conservation in their region. So we want to bring all these data sets together, and that's not to exclude even smaller data sets. There are a lot of consultants who map vernal pools. Ed Pollack has done a lot of mapping in Connecticut on a smaller scale, and that data, again, those data are very valuable, or data from a county park, or from a wildlife management area, or something like that. All of these smaller data sets, of course, we want to hopefully incorporate. So we've proposed some draft data fields, sort of required data fields, as well as supplementary data fields that would enhance the data. And you know, we'll need to, this is kind of a balancing act between having too many data fields to make it too onerous for people to submit their data, but having enough data to make it useful. So one of our breakout sessions later, we'll be discussing these data fields and determining, you know, what's the minimum we need to make this usable, and what sort of supplementary data fields are there that would really enhance the value if people can submit those. And as far as preparing data for submission to this, again, we're not sure how this is going to look or what shape it's going to take. But again, we want to try to limit those required data fields so that it's fairly easy for people to submit their data in the correct format. And even though we're not from the government, we're here to help. So if possible, we will help prepare submissions as well. If it's too much of a burden to get fields aligned, you know, and you can just send us your data, we can get it set up properly. And then the metadata is another nightmare as well. A lot of people get frightened off by the idea of preparing metadata. So again, we want to keep it straightforward and fairly simple, but of course we're going to need to know what these data are. 10 years from now, if somebody looks at it and wants to know what is this data field, we're going to need decent metadata that describes what it is in clear terms, who the original data owners are, etc. So that's the other topic we'll be talking about in the breakout session is metadata. We'll probably try to keep it something somewhat standardized, maybe something along the Darwin core fields, so that it's a standardized type of metadata. And we've proposed sort of 3 data access levels. And again, these are just draft as a starting point. And we have a breakout session that will be discussing these data access levels as well. So I'm not really going to go into them here. And then as far as visualizing our data, the North Atlantic Landscape Conservation Cooperative is using Data Basin, and they have the Conservation Planning Atlas, which displays their data as a tool for visualizing data for their projects, and we fully anticipate that these data will be incorporated into the Conservation Planning Atlas as well. And B.J. Richardson will be talking about that in one of the afternoon presentations, talking about the Conservation Planning Atlas and how it works.